tracks and hang out with my black grandma. Being mixed allows me to connect with everyone. Being biracial and being from the country, I can talk to guys like Travis Frederick from Wisconsin and Doug Free from Wisconsin. And then I can go over and talk to Des Bryant. I mean, think about the two different standpoints. You need to have a real conversation with both to really understand what they've been through. I don't think many can do that. For me, it's not hard. Then an anonymous white Cowboys player backed up Dak's comments on his ability to connect. Quote, not to crap on Tony Romo because he's done so much for this team. But no matter how hard he'll try, there are just some things that he can't do, some ways that he can't connect with some of the guys in here like Dak can. Now, Stephen A., I find this very interesting because I've heard a lot of biracial people say in the past they didn't feel accepted by either group, and now he's looking at this as an advantage. Is Dak possibly right here?
I think he's possibly right. I can't say definitively per se, but I think he's possibly right. And just to be as forthcoming as I can possibly be, I can somewhat relate. My grandmother was white. God rest her soul. She was a wonderful woman. No one has ever loved me more. She was a white woman. My mother comes from a mixed marriage. And being in that environment and ingratiating yourself with somebody of a different hue, of a different ethnicity, and them doing the same, ultimately there's a comfort level and there's a level of communication that you're able to have. And it's not to say that somebody would, that doesn't come from a biracial background can't do it. Let's not insult people like that. It's just that the level of comfort that you have, it's undeniable because there's a familiarity when you're speaking to folks. That's why I always laugh. That's how I know that I've been a damn good journalist in my career, because I got black folks calling me sellout half the time, and I got white folks calling me racist all the time. So I know I'm right down the middle. I'm fair-minded, and that's what I pride myself in being. But that's where it comes from, because I know I'm from the streets of New York City, and I know I'm a brother. But at the same time, I also recognize that one of the people in this world that loved me better than anybody on the planet was a white woman who happened to be my grandma. And so as a result, when I'm communicating with folks of a different ethnicity, there is a comfort level that I have. I don't walk into a situation with preconceived notions and beliefs about who somebody is just because of the color of their skin. I have to hear them open their mouth. I have to witness their behavior. I have to see how they conduct themselves before I pass judgment, as opposed to being predisposed to believing something about them. And I think that's what Dak Prescott is saying here. And if you have that kind of attitude, Max, I think that helps you communicating in a locker room.
People are formed by their experiences. It is reasonable to say that someone from mixed ethnicity or racial background will be attuned differently to and sensitive differently to other people of different backgrounds, maybe than someone who isn't. I don't think that's unreasonable. By the way, see Obama, Barack, right? Like, this is not, and by the way, other athletes, we were just talking about the Yankees, Derek Jeter, for example. And so I think, sure, that's not unreasonable to talk about. And we live in such a politically correct and sensitive time, especially with social media, that these topics are sometimes difficult to discuss publicly, because if you don't do it at a PhD level, if you're not up on the latest scholarship, one wrong word and people are afraid to be kind of caught up in a controversy, just making an observation that maybe they didn't articulate perfectly, or they was not fully formed, or if it was fully formed, was wrong-headed in some way. They're not able to even make observations publicly that they feel comfortable about. So I accept all that. I also think that there's a generational thing here in that Cowboys locker room. Tony Romo's an old guy. He's from a different generation than these young players. Dak Prescott is of their generation, and maybe partly because of his ethnic or racial makeup is I mean, if he wants to think that, or someone else wants to think that, okay, maybe there's truth to it. Is preternaturally gifted in terms of leadership abilities. And so these young guys feel comfortable following him because he is one of them, not just in terms of his racial identity, but in terms of his age.
Yeah, but be clear, we're only bringing up the racial identity element because he brought it up.
Sure.
Yeah, and I agree with both of you. I think the one thing about Dak Prescott is that, it is about experiences, and his life experience has been on both sides of the railroad track, like he said. But going into a locker room, and if a locker room is just a microcosm of society, I mean, if you're a person outside of the locker room that's biracial, there is a relationship there. And when you get into the locker room itself, you better have thick skin regardless of what race you are on both sides of the aisle. I think Dak is a guy that can walk over to a Dez Bryant and talk the lingo like Dez would talk from parts of Texas. I mean, it's just the way he relates to you. And then he goes over to Travis Frederick and does the same thing. He is that guy because of his experiences as a whole. But I think it's the makeup of Dak that's able to accept certain things that goes on in the locker room.
Well,
I think that's the biggest thing, because there's some players that were biracial that I played with. They're either going one way or they're going the other. And that's just through life experiences. This guy, you walk in that locker room, he is by far, and I keep on hearing Romo, if Dak doesn't play well, Romo's going to come in and play. And listen, this is Dak Prescott's team. On the field, in the locker room, wherever you want to talk about, across the board, he is the guy, much like Troy Aikman was the guy in the 90s.
Well, I appreciate your honesty in breaking it down from a locker room perspective the way that you did. And I think it's important to make sure we remember this. Dak Prescott is a leader. It's clearly his team. We've got a lot to be proud of when it comes to this guy and what he's showcasing. The Dallas Cowboy hater that I am is basically because of the fans. As individuals, they're phenomenal, and I'm real proud of them, him and Ezekiel Elliott. But let's also point out the versatility aspect that you brought up, him being able to communicate with both sides. Because speaking as a black man, and I'm quite sure that Darren will co-sign when I say this, Max and Molly, it's this. You can be biracial. You can have those experiences. You can be diverse enough to communicate with all folks. Black folks don't have a problem with that. We respect that. What black folks monitor and watch out for is whether or not you're willing to embrace who you are as it pertains to how society perceives you as being. If you are clearly a black man, biracial or not, but you are a black man, but you want to disassociate and distance yourself from your own, now you have offended us.
Yep.
Well,
because that, and
what you're talking about,
hasn't done that.
What you're talking about is authenticity.
That's
Are
right.
you an authentic person?
Right.
Does that, someone like Dak Prescott can speak without, we bring up other athletes. Cam Newton is one. Alex Rodriguez was another. When they spoke, a friend of mine said this once, it stuck with me, about A-Rod. When he speaks, he's so uncomfortable, it seems, in his own skin, he makes you uncomfortable in yours.
Right.
In other words, he has not fully internalized what we all want to hear.
Right.
And so he has to consider carefully what he says. But someone who has internalized all the right kind of things, at least the way as it's the received wisdom, the orthodoxy, the way we want people to sound, someone who has internalized that, that's really them. They don't have to think so hard about what they say because they're authentic. They believe what they say. And so it's a wellspring.
But it's not just
the wellspring is them. They don't need to edit so much. They say what they say and we like it.
But it's not just believing it. It's not being afraid to be it. You see what I'm saying? You can believe it wholeheartedly, but still be fearful because of how you're going to be received.
Right.
The point when you say authenticity, understand it's twofold. The one part is believing it. The other part is being unapologetic about it and fearless about it because you are who you are and you're cool with it.
That has to do with, is the righteousness that you hear from someone something that we like? If we like that point of view, if it's mainstream, then we embrace that person as being authentic and righteous and good. And if it's not something we like to hear, that person is ostracized. But Dak is saying stuff that people like to hear.
And I think there's definitely validity in his statement, but he's certainly a special guy and a leader, and it's hard not to root for him,
It's very hard.
Even as a Cowboy,
It's very hard not to root for him because he deserves to be rooted for. It's that damn uniform that does it.
All right, let's move on.
It's that damn uniform.
Darren, you will be back with us later. Appreciate you. Coming up at the top of the 11 a.m. hour, Floyd Mayweather will join us at the desk to talk about a possible rematch with Pacquiao. What and who should win the NFL MVP? And if the Cowboys really are an accident waiting to happen. Plus, Derrick Rose MIA on Monday, back with the team on Tuesday, and will start tonight for the Knicks. But should he be in the starting lineup? We'll discuss. And why is Le'Veon Bell comparing himself to Chef Curry with the shot? And is the comparison fair? The guys will debate it.